Hi guys, today I'm going to be showing you how to make this 3D banana, and you're going to need 54 rubber bands in total, and you can make it whatever color you want. I'm going to be making it on the loom, and we're only using 6 pegs, and I configured my 2 looms to be in a Monstertail configuration to show you how to do both in this tutorial. So you can try it either on the Monstertail or on the loom. So we'll start on the loom, taking a single brown rubber band, covering from one peg to the other. I'm covering from the center to the right, and on the Monstertail we'll do it from the 2 pegs across. So now taking a single band from the outside, pulling it across. Repeat for the Monstertail. We'll pull it across like that, so we've covered the 2 side pegs. And for the regular loom, we'll pull the bottom and pulling it, covering 4 pegs like that. So that's what yours should look like. For the Monstertail, we'll do the same thing, pulling the straight band to cover the 4th peg. So that's what it should look like for both. Taking our second band, which is our brown, and covering the 4 pegs like that. And I'll do the same for my Monstertail. Now we're going to loop the bottom single up and to the center. And we're grabbing from the outside and looping it up and over to the center of our loom. I'm just repeating the same process for my Monstertail configuration. Push it all down. That was band number 2. Band number 3 through 5 we'll do the same thing, taking a single band and covering all 4 pegs and looping the bottom band up and over to the center, and repeat that for the Monstertail also. So number 3, number 4, number 5, so I have 5 on my loom configuration, and I'll do one more on my Monstertail. I'm using a tie-dye band, switching up my stem color. Once again, looping the bottom single band up and over and onto the center, pushing it down. So that was row number 5 for my regular loom. Row number 6, we're going to take 2 single rubber bands. Mine will be yellow, and we'll cover once again the 4 pegs. Stretching it out and covering the 4 pegs and looping the bottom single up and over to the center. That was row number 6. And for my Monstertail, we'll do the same thing. We're taking our 2 rubber bands and we'll cover the 4 pegs and looping the bottom band up and over. And push everything down. Row number 7, we're taking 4 single bands and covering the 4 pegs, and then looping the bottom bands up and over, leaving 2 bands left on each peg. I'm going to repeat for my Monstertail, same thing, taking a single band, covering the 4 pegs. Looping the bottom 2 bands up and over, leaving 2 loops left on each peg. Push everything down. Now row number 7, we're going to expand to 6 pegs. So on my regular loom, I'm going to pull the center 2nd peg, those loops off, and stretching it out to the side 2nd peg, or the peg across from this side one all the way across, so my center peg has no loops on it. It's just there in the way. Now we want to pull a single band off of these 2 side pegs that's attached to the center peg on the side. So I'm pulling a band off of the center 1st peg and check to make sure that it's attached to the side 1st peg, the right side, and taking that, pulling it over to attach it to the left 1st peg. And repeat for this side, taking a loop off, make sure it's connected to this peg, and then attaching it to the 6th peg in the center 3rd. So now we've covered 6 pegs. For the Monstertail, same thing. I'm going to move these 2 loops off and stretching it to the 3rd peg on the side, and now pulling a band off of these 2 that's connected to this one and attaching it to this one or this one. So starting on my left side, I'm pulling a single band off. I see it's attached to the right 1st peg and reattaching that to the middle side peg. And this other side, same thing, I'm pulling a loop off of the center 2nd peg, and I see that's attached to this one, and I don't want that one, so I'm going to hold it, grab the other loop off of that side 2nd peg, and it's attached to the 1st peg, so I'm looping it to the 3rd side peg and then reattaching this one. Now I'm covering 6 pegs for both configurations. For rows 8 through 12, we're taking a single band, covering the 6 pegs and looping the bottom bands up and over, leaving 2 loops left per peg. So continue on, pause the video if you have to, or fast forward it to skip the parts you don't need. You always want to make sure there are 2 loops left on each peg. Repeat that on my Monstertail, taking a single yellow band and covering the 6 pegs. And looping the bottom bands up and over, leaving 2 loops because we expanded it. We're looping only a single band on these 2 pegs. Repeat on the other side. Now you should have 2 loops left per peg. And I'm going to continue this for rows 9 through 12 for both. I'm going to fast forward. The step is pretty repetitive. Finished up row number 12 for both of my configurations. And if you want to make your banana longer, you can continue a few more rows. Now I'm going to reduce to 4 pegs. So I'm starting with my left side, taking a single band off of the first side peg. My rubber band's slippery. And I want to pull the one that's attached to the side second peg, and I can see this one's attached to the center. So I'm going to put it aside, getting this loop off. It's attached to the side second, and pulling that onto the center first, and reattaching this one back onto itself. And now pulling these 2 loops off of the side second and attaching it to the side first. And now this peg has 3 loops. Repeating on this side, pulling a loop off. I want to pull the one that's attached to the second peg. So check these bands, and I see it's attached to the second side peg, and looping that onto the center first. And the center first now has 4 loops on there. Now pulling these 2 loops off of the side second and attaching it onto the first peg. And that should have 3 loops on it. Now get these 2 loops off of the center third, pulling the bands all off of the center second peg. Pull it to the side to make room, and then reattaching those 2 loops onto the center second peg. And now we're back to 4 pegs, and we're going to take 4 bands and looping the bottom 2 up and over to cover the 4 pegs. Now taking a single band, covering the 4 pegs and looping the bottom bands up and over, leaving only 2 loops left on each peg. Pull it to the side, and you should continue this for row number 14. Same thing. Now for the Monstertail, let's reduce to 4 pegs. We're going to pull a single band off of the center peg and make sure it's attached to the third peg and moving that to the first peg. So starting on this side, taking a single band off, check to see that's attached to the third peg, and it is not, so I'm holding it. Taking the other band off, it's attached to the third, and moving it to the first side peg, reattaching the one you're holding, and then moving this 2 loops back to the second side peg. So now this has 3 loops, and this has 3 loops. Repeat on the other side, pulling a loop off, and checking to make sure it's attached to the third, and it's not, so I'm holding that and pulling the other loop off and attaching it to the first side peg, and then reattaching the loop you were holding. So now the first one has 3 loops, and once again move these 2 loops off and reattaching it to the second side peg. So we're back to 4 pegs, taking a single band, covering the 4 pegs and looping the bottom bands up and over, leaving 2 loops per peg. Push it down, continue one more time. that was row number 14, and you can continue on if you want your banana to be longer. But take row number 15, I'm taking 2 single bands and covering the 4 pegs. And then looping the bottom 2 bands up and over. Do the same for the Monstertail. Taking 2 bands and looping it around 4 pegs, and then pulling the bottom 2 bands up and over and onto the center, pushing it down. Row number 16 and 17 will be back to brown, taking a single band, covering the 4 pegs and looping the bottom bands up and over. Now we should have a single loop left on each peg for all configurations, and continue for our last brown band, same thing. Let's take it off the loom, going clockwise, getting all the loops onto your hook. Taking a single band and tying it off in a slip knot. There's my banana. Curve it and manipulate the shape and stretch these out so the stem is tight, and tuck in your charm string. And do the same for the Monstertail, taking it off the loom. There's my one banana. Let's take it, the Monstertail. Same thing, going around clockwise and tying it off with a slip knot band, pulling it through and tying it off. Stretch out our banana, stretch out our stem. The stem is a little shorter for my Monstertail. We used less bands for the stem, and tuck in the charm string. So there are your bananas. I hope you like them. Thanks for watching.